remember, and repeat. Read, remember, and repeat. And if you were able to do that fairly well, you were given the mortarboard of the sheepskin. And they said you had learned. Doesn't necessarily mean you've learned anything at all. You might have learned how to develop your memory, but that might have been the end of it. Now, I'm not saying no one learns doing that. Some do. But he said learning is not gathering information. Learning is when you consciously entertain an idea, you get emotionally involved in the idea, you step out and act on the idea, and you improve the results in some area of your life. Now,
Super nice, family. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody is well. This is the Night Show, Read, Remember, Repeat, and we are back with another episode. I think this is episode 10. You know what I mean? So you already know, family. Page 87, The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. And we're going to get through this. We on the case stories. We finished case story 5, so we're on case story 6. So we got 6, 7, 8. Then case story 9. Nope, 8 goes all the way up. So without further ado, family, let's go. Only the most complete and intense use of the law of assumption could have produced such results in this extreme situation. 4 years ago, a friend of our family asked that I talk with his 28-year-old son, who was not expected to live. He was suffering from a rare heart disease. This disease resulted in a disintegration of the organ. Long and costly medical care had been of no avail. Doctors held out no hope for recovery. For a long time, the son had been confined to his bed. His body had shrunk to almost a skeleton, and he could talk and breathe only with great difficulty. His wife and 2 small children were home when I called, and his wife was present throughout our discussion. I started by telling him that there was only one solution to any problem, and that solution was a change of attitude. Since talking exhausted him, I asked him to nod in agreement. If he understood clearly what I said, this he agreed to do. I described the facts underlying the law of reality, of consciousness. In fact, that consciousness was the only reality. I told him that the way to change any condition was to change his state of consciousness concerning it. As a specific aid in helping him to assume the feeling of already being well, I suggested that in imagination, he see the doctor's face expressing incredulous amazement in finding him recovered. Contrary to all reason, from the last stages of an incurable disease, that he see him double checking in his examination and hear him saying over and over, "It's a miracle. It's a miracle." He not only understood all this clearly, but he believed it implicitly. He promised that he would faithfully follow this procedure. His wife, who had been listening intently, assured me that she too would diligently use the law of assumption in her imagination in the same way as her husband. The following day, I sailed for New York, all this taking place during a winter vacation in the tropics. Several months later, I received a letter saying the son had made a miraculous recovery. On my next visit, I met him in person. He was in perfect health, actively engaged in business and thoroughly enjoying the many social activities of his friends and family. He told me that from the day I left, he never had any doubt that it would work. He described how he had faithfully followed the suggestion I had made to him, and day after day had lived completely in the assumption of already being well and strong. Now, 4 years after his recovery, he is convinced that the only reason he is here today is due to his successful use of the law of assumption. Wow. Case story number 7. This story illustrates the successful use of the law by a New York business executive. In the fall of 1950, an executive of one of the New York's prominent banks discussed with me a serious problem with which he was confronted. He told me that the outlook for his personal progress and advancement was very dim. Having reached middle age and feeling that a marked improvement in position and income was justified, he had talked it out with his superiors. They frankly told him that any major improvement was impossible and intimated that if he was dissatisfied, he could seek another job. This, of course, only increased his uneasiness. In our talk, he explained that he had no great desire for really big money, but that he had to have a substantial income in order to maintain his home comfortably and to provide for the education of his children in good preparatory schools and colleges. This he found impossible on his present income. The refusal of the bank to assure him of any advancement in the near future resulted in a feeling of discontent and an intense desire to secure a better position with considerably more money. He confided in me that the kind of job he would like better than anything in the world was one in which he managed the investment funds of a large institution, such as a foundation or great university. In explaining the law of assumption, I stated that his present situation was only a manifestation of his concept of himself, and declared that if he wanted to change the circumstances in which he found himself, he could do so by changing his concept of himself. In order to bring about this change of consciousness, and thereby a change in his situation, I asked him to follow this procedure every night. Just before he fell asleep, in imagination, he was to feel he was retiring at the end of one of the most important and successful days of his life. He was to imagine that he had actually closed a deal that very day to join the kind of organization he yearned to be with, and in exactly the capacity he wanted. I suggested to him that if he succeeded in completely filling his mind with the feeling, he would experience a definite sense of relief. In this mood, his uneasiness and discontent would be a thing of the past. He would feel the contentment that comes with the fulfillment of desire. I wound up by assuring him that if he did this faithfully, he would inevitably get the kind of position he wanted. This was the first week of December. Night after night, without exception, he followed this procedure. Early in February, a director of one of the wealthiest foundations in the world asked this executive if he would be interested in joining the foundation in an executive capacity handling investments. After some brief discussion, he accepted. Today, at a substantially higher income and with the assurance of steady progress, this man is in a position far exceedingly all that he had hoped for. Family, is source time. After we give y'all this, we will be right back with Case Story 8. I can't wait. Let's go.
See, you gotta work. You gotta work. I'm talking about you gotta work when you don't want to. I'm talking about when you're tired, when things ain't right, you gotta work when you don't want to, and you gotta show up early. And I'm talking about work, I'm talking about whatever you got going on, your entrepreneur, I'm talking about anything in life. I'm talking about that thing you say you want, you gotta be willing to put that work in. And when you show up, you gotta show up, man, with everything. When I show up early, but then on top of that, I got my work gloves, I got my hard hat, everything, all the equipment I need in order to perform, in order to listen, because you only get paid for your performance in life. Can't nobody else perform for you and make it happen and get you the way you need to be at in life. So you know what? You gotta work when you don't want to. I'm talking about in the moments when you feel like you feel fatigued, you feel like breaking down, that's when you know you're doing something. You know what I mean? If you're not feeling like you fatigued, if you ain't feeling like you breaking down, you might not be doing it. You might just be standing on the sideline like, like a fan or a heckler in the audience. You got to work when you don't feel like it. You got to push yourself all the way to the end. If you say you want everything you say you want in life, in order to materialize your dreams, in order to materialize everything you say you want, you got to work when you don't feel like it. Make sure you show up early. Make sure you show up with your equipment. It's just, see, you got to work.
And we are back, gang. Case story number 8. I'm hyped. I'm pumped up. This is all helping me with my belief, my assumptions. So I hope this is helping you with yours. Let's go. Let's tune in. Let's get it done. Case story number 8. The man and wife in this story have attended my lectures for a number of years. It is an interesting illustration of the conscious use of this law by two people concentrating on the same objective at one time. This man and wife were an exceptionally devoted couple. Their life was completely happy and entirely free from any problems or frustrations. For some time, they had planned to move into a larger apartment. The more they thought about it, the more they realized that what they had their hearts set on was a beautiful penthouse. In discussing it together, the husband explained that he wanted one with a huge window looking out on a magnificent view. The wife said she would like to have one side of the walls mirrored from top to bottom. They both wanted to have a wood-burning fireplace. It was a must that the apartment be in New York City. For months, they had searched for just such an apartment in vain. In fact, the situation in the city was such that the securing of any kind of apartment was almost an impossibility. They were so scarce that not only were there waiting lists for them, but all sorts of special deals, including premiums, the buying of furniture, etc., were involved. New apartments were being leased long before they were completed, many being rented from the blueprints of the building. Early in the spring, after months of fruitless seeking, they finally located one which they seriously considered. It was a penthouse apartment in a building just being completed on Upper Fifth Avenue facing Central Park. It had one serious drawback, being a new building. It was not subject to rent control, and the couple felt the yearly rental was exorbitant. In fact, it was several $1,000s a year, more than they had considered paying during the spring months of March and April. They continued looking at various penthouses throughout the city, but they always came back to this one. Finally, they decided to increase the amount they would pay substantially and made a proposition which the agent for the building agreed to forward to the owners for consideration. It was at this point, without discussing it with each other, each determined to apply the law of assumption. It was not until later that each learned what the other had done. Night after night, they both fell asleep in imagination in the apartment they were considering. The husband, lying with his eyes closed, could imagine that his bedroom windows were overlooking the park. He would imagine going to the window the first thing in the morning and enjoying the view. He felt himself sitting on the terrace overlooking the park, having cocktails with his wife and friends, all thoroughly enjoying it. He filled his mind with actually feeling himself in the penthouse and on the terrace. During all this time, unknown to him, his wife was doing the same thing. Several weeks went by without any decision on the part of the owners, but they continued to imagine as they fell asleep each night that they were actually sleeping in the penthouse. One day, to their complete surprise, one of the employees in the apartment building in which they lived told them that the penthouse there was vacant. They were astonished because there was one of the most desirable buildings in the city with a perfect location right on Central Park. They knew there was a long waiting list of people trying to get an apartment in their building. The fact that a penthouse had unexpectedly become available was kept quiet by the management because they were not in a position to consider any applicants for it. Upon learning that it was vacant, this couple immediately made a request that it be rented to them, only to be told that this was impossible. The fact was that not only were there several people on the waiting list for a penthouse in the building, but it was actually promised to one family. Despite this, the couple had a series of meetings with the management, at the conclusion of which the apartment was theirs. The building being subject to rent control, their rental was just about what they had planned to pay when they first started looking for a penthouse. The location, the apartment itself, and the large terrace surrounding it on the south, west, and north was beyond all their expectations. And in the living room, on one side is a giant window, 15 feet by 8 feet, with a magnificent view of Central Park. One wall is mirrored from floor to ceiling, and there is a wood-burning fireplace. Wow, family. So they actually got the place. We're going to leave the rest of these chapters for tomorrow and the next day after that, because I think we'll be finished in 2 days. You know what I mean? So, you know, we do the morning show, we do the night show. Read, remember, repeat. The power of awareness. Thank you, Neville Goddard. Assumption, family. Assumption. Let's get it. Gang.